Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and thank you so much for joining us for one of our talks today. I'm so excited today to be talking about the fantastic new film, This Is the Year. We have David Henrie, who is the writer and director of the film and also acts in the film as Sebastian, and Lorenzo James Henrie, who plays the lead character, Josh. And David, I wanted to start by asking you about a lot of your cinematic influences with this film, because I thought it was interesting that you were looking both at a lot of 80s movies like 16 Candles, The Breakfast Club, Ferris Bueller, but also at slightly more recent films like 500 Days of Summer and even something like Juno, which is a slightly different tone. And in looking at all of these different spaces in time and types of movies, what were some of the reference points or tonal elements that you really wanted to carry over into this modern exploration of a romantic comedy?
That's a great question. Really well said. I wanted to make a movie that could invite the whole family in to watch. It's a movie that I hope will appeal to its target demo of tweens and teens. But at the same time, if a parent wants to sit down and watch during these crazy COVID times, the family is spending a lot more time together, which is great. I wanted something that the entire family could sit down and watch, but was made primarily for tweens and teens. So I wanted throwback 80s references that parents grew up watching. John Hughes kind of feel classic execution, nothing that's too shaky or handheld or makes you feel kind of sick while you're watching it. But at the same time, keep it paced and keep it moving quickly, almost like a 500 Days of Summer or a Jason Reitman film or a Edgar Wright film. Just transitions, keep the story moving along quickly, but something that a parent could watch and be like, oh, this kind of reminds me of an 80s movie I grew up watching or a 90s movie I grew up watching. Those were my favorite movies. So I wanted to put that influence on this, but do it in a kind of modern day setting. So it's something that I hope to create an atmosphere by which everyone can sit down and watch it and just have a feel good movie. And it's unabashedly feel good. It's not meant to be something that you go in there and you're trying to do math the whole time and figure it out. It's something you're supposed to feel good, have a great time, and hopefully pull one of your kids under your arm in the end and give them a kiss or something.
And Lorenzo, off the back of that as well, because I know that David gave you and the rest of the cast some of those movies specifically as research points, and you were also involved and around and having conversations together during the script writing process as well. So you obviously knew a lot of what those influences were that were carrying into the film. How did that help you in terms of shaping your character and really looking at films like that and who a lot of the central characters are, and just really thinking about what were some of the aspects in terms of how your character approaches his narrative arc that you wanted to carry into the movie with him?
Yeah, I think as an actor, I sort of had an advantage that most actors don't get, because most actors, when they book a movie, they show up on set or they get a couple weeks before with the director or the cast to say like, okay, what are we doing? What are our relationships here? I was able to be a part of the development process years and years and years before the movie was made. So when we did start shooting, it was like, all right, I have this thing down. Let's go knock this out. But I think 500 Days of Summer was a big comp for Josh, especially because it's or at least as an actor, that was sort of the vibe I was trying to go for and trying to portray. But I had this guy to help me, and it was pretty easy.
And for both of you, in terms of shaping that character of Josh, one of the interesting elements in watching him on screen is that he is going through this journey. He's trying to figure out and understand certain things like romance. And it is that really pivotal age just before everybody starts going off to college and leaves home. And so there's certain things that he's still road mapping in his life. And at the same time, him and all the other characters still all have a really strong sense of who they are at the same time. And was it important to both of you that all of these characters still have like a really strong inner sense of self?
Yeah, I mean, I believe, that every person on screen deserves an arc. And so each one of the characters that we put in the film, coming of age was a big theme in the film. So all of the ensemble had an arc. And that was really key to myself and the rest of the writers on the film along the way, was to make sure that they all start somewhere and end somewhere different, learn something powerful along the way, and, leave renewed. So yeah, the idea that each one of these characters would be unique and distinct and different and have their own arcs was really important. If you can cut any character in the film and it still works, the character shouldn't be there. So we wanted to really make each one of these characters meaningful and give them kind of powerful arcs. Again, I want this to be a whole family feel good experience. So each person sitting down to watch the movie hopefully will identify with one of the characters. There's these two brothers that have a powerful arc throughout the way. They're misunderstanding each other, and and tackle that along the road, literally. And so hopefully people with siblings will watch that and go, oh yeah, that reminds me of my sibling, or that's a similar arc that I've had. I remember the first time that I showed it to Selena Gomez, her security was with her, as he always is, and he sat in and watched the movie as well. And the movie ends, and Selena loved it. She's like, "Oh, it's so good! I'm excited. I want to be involved." And she jumped on board to produce. And I look over at her security guard, and the guy's got like a tear in his eye. And I was like, "What's going on? Are you okay?" And he's like, "Man, that reminded me of me and my brother. It's like I went through a similar thing with my brother, and like it totally hit. Who would have known? You know, he just came in to watch the movie, and he took something from it that I didn't expect. And this is a grown adult with teenage children, and he really related to the brother arc in the film. So I hope that's the experience that people will get from the film.
Should put a poster out that even security guards will cry.
He's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Well, Lorenzo, to that point as well, how did that influence the way that you were really thinking about your character's emotional journey and his arc, and the stages where you felt like there would be those gradual shifts and changes? Because he is a character who, you know, again, like has that comfort in who he is, but is a little bit romantically shy. And then he gets a little bit more of a sense of himself in that regard as the movie progresses, particularly with his friendship with Molly. And so how did you really map out the different beats and the gradual evolution of that side of him?
That's a great question. I will say, as a side note, as an actor, you know, I've been fortunate with being leads in a few other independent movies, but you know, I've always been in ensemble casts like on Fear the Walking Dead or Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, you know, the higher you sort of are up in the call sheet, in my opinion, it's harder to be that number, you know, the lead guy, because you know, as an actor, there's a lot of pressure on you. So really hitting those beats, those pivotal character beats in the first, second, and third act, I think were really important, because I wanted to do my best. I wanted to make him happy. But I think once you understand the character's flaw and what he's going into the journey to try to achieve by the end, by the last page, it sort of becomes fun as an actor. So really just spending time with David, spending time around the script, spending time with Vanessa. She was a huge part of one of our cast members, and her character was so important, playing Molly. I think that was a really easy, like an athlete bouncing, you know, like playing with your teammate. So she was a huge help for me to really progress my character arc, because she was so good. And all the cast, by the way, was amazing. But I think especially having that opposite was really helpful for me to really hit those character beats and those arcs. And then, you know, hopefully the rest looks good.
And David, you also really use the film as an exploration of breaking down the idea of archetypes. You know, there's the character of Zoe who comes in at the beginning, and it's like, oh, that's the hot girl at school, and people don't really spend the time getting to know her. And even Lorenzo's character, Josh, develops this really idealistic fantasy of who she is at the beginning before he's even had a conversation with her. And you really play out lots of different elements in terms of the way people really project ideas of who someone is onto them before getting to know them, with a lot of the supporting cast. And so how did you really use a lot of the different characters in a way to explore that ideology throughout the film?
Yeah, that you really get the film, because that's another awesome question. The part of one of the early on ideas was to give the quote unquote hot girl an arc, and show that she's not what everyone thinks she is. Rarely ever is it so. And in a lot of the 80s movies and 90s movies, the quote unquote hot girl was never really given her fair shot, and she was just kind of used and abused, and it's stale. She just didn't have a meaningful arc. And so our female writer, Sienna Aquilini, really brought a great voice and agency to that character and gave her, I think, a really meaningful arc. And at the same time, the counterweight to that was Josh's arc, who is someone who overly romanticized and idealized the quote unquote hot girl from all the movies he watched as a kid. So he also has to come of age as well and deal with the theme of expectation versus reality, and that they're not always the same thing. So it kind of all works in concert as the film progresses, but making sure each one of these characters are not always what they seem is a big theme in the film, especially for the lead character of Zoe. because she's so much more than what's on the surface. And we wanted to really dig into that in this film and show authentic female friendship. Her and Molly have a relationship that's not combative and that's actually mutually helpful and supportive. They actually cure one another throughout the film of their issues. And it's not a guy that comes in and swoops in and saves the day. So all of those things were really important to us. And the Sienna Aquilini did a great job really bringing an agency and authentic voice to those characters and those arcs as well. So I was really happy to work with her.
And speaking a little bit more about the character of Molly and her relationship on screen with Josh, I wanted to talk about the use of cinematic language as a means of communication and connection between the two of them, because it's something, David, that you've used as a directorial standpoint. You know, we get to see them in the cinema, we get to see them kind of like watching a movie within the movie and the way that they connect on that. And then for you, Lorenzo, I imagine it also brings a lot to your performance with Vanessa in the way that you can really look at how do they connect on movies, what are the things that they're both really on the same page as, what's their emotional connection to that, and how does that represent their emotional connection with each other. And so just wanted to ask both of you about the ways in which you really utilize cinematic language as a means of communication within the film.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the goals for me was to really use all the tools at my disposal in a classic way to evoke emotion. So little things like color theory, making Zoe and Molly opposites in color and kind of making Lorenzo's color palette exactly in between the two of them. And then throughout the film, he comes around to one of their sides. I'm not going to ruin it, but using things to like subliminally program the audience to say these two are opposites, like literally opposites on the color wheel. And then you have Josh who's kind of stuck in the middle. And doing things like utilizing the Spielberg face, which is that nice slow push in and a character looking off camera. It kind of draws you into what he's looking at and you sympathize for the character. Using all of those tools to really get emotion out of the shot and out of the audience, and light it in a way that begets that vibe. We just used all of those tools at our disposal, and I knew I wanted to approach it from a classic sense and really drive home the emotion. Like, I don't want to shy away from that. Again, this is supposed to be a feel-good movie. Like, I think a lot of people dog Spielberg and others like him for being too emotional, and I love it. I'm like, that's why I'm going to the movies. Like, I want an emotional roller coaster. That's exactly what I'm looking for. So I definitely tried to do a lot of that in the film, and hopefully a lot of those elements came across.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the one push, like Josh's inciting incident where he decides to, go on this road trip. In the theater scene, David had a push in, and then my character, my eyes light up, and then the popcorn goes off. It's in the trailer of our movie. The popcorn goes off behind you. So that was like the light bulb. And that just sort of, as an actor, it makes it easier. It's like, okay, you're not only relying on the talent of the actor, you're also relying on the talent of, the cinematographer, the DP, the lighting guy, his creative vision. So I think that was, Vanessa grew up in the business like us as child actors. So we were able to use that cinematic language to really just bounce off one another. And, it was really just providential, her being in that role, because we grew up with such similar, she was a child actress on Disney shows and all this stuff. So it's like we have very similar family backgrounds. And I think that was used for our advantage as that best friend characters, because we were able to really just knock it out, especially when you only have about 25 days to do this.
And David, also within a lot of the ways that you've utilized the camera, you also use it as a way at certain moments, to that point of like the camera pop, the light bulb pop being a popcorn moment. There's other ways in which you really use camera choices to bring us inside Josh's character. There's a moment where the camera kind of like slowly pans in on him and things are slowing down a little bit before we're snapped back to reality. And so was it something that even when you were writing the script that you really started to see a lot of those internal moments and wanting to bring us inside of him as a character through camera?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, as we were writing along, I had a lot of doodles and scratches and storyboards and ideas of things along the way. Absolutely. And knowing that it was subjective narration along the way, wanting to tell the story through Josh's eyes, that just begot a lot. And so as long as I stuck to that, the camera choices kind of became clear organically. And the goal was to just try to move the story along. So use transitions, whip pan into other scenes, just move it quickly. Because it's, everyone's seen love triangles and love stories and everything. So it's not about even guessing the ending. It's about how you get there. So making it fun and emotional and exciting along the way was the goal.
I will brag a little. A lot of people with independent movies and with smaller budget movies, they do a lot of things to try to save money. That way we can make our days. Something David really wanted to do that we just for pre-production was storyboarding, to have the key moments storyboarded, which is, again, a lot people do it, but it's not really a popular thing, I would say.
Not in low budget. Like I have a lot of friends who are storyboard artists, so I was lucky that we were able to storyboard a ton, and that saved us a lot of time.
My point is, I follow James Gunn on Instagram, and I'm a huge fan of James Gunn. I love his movie, Guardians of the Galaxy. He posted like the first 12 pages storyboarded, and he's like, "This is so." Had a whole post on how necessary it was to storyboard a movie.
Oh, I'd love to see that.
And I was like, "Yep, my brother does that too."
Oh, cool! I'd love to see that.
So
it's so essential.
Yeah. And I also wanted to talk about the way that music builds such an atmosphere in the film. And it's not just something about, oh, this song sounds great, we'll put it here. Again, it's really building aspects of character. And again, going back to the character of Josh, it really gives us a way inside of his mind that music is a way of communication for him as well. And part of the way that he wants to initially express his emotions to Zoe, and he has this real passion for it as well with DJing and creating music. And you also have that great song by Lovely, the band at the end, Maybe I'm Afraid, which I heard that you actually were listening to that during the script writing process, and that's how it ended up being part of the arc towards the end of the film, and the lyrics just work so perfectly. And so again, kind of directing it, how did music really sit with you in a way to really explore a lot more layers of the internal journeys of these characters? And for you, Lorenzo, was it something where music actually helped you in your character development process as well, and really finding a lot of the beats of scenes?
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, music, it's an audio visual medium. So music really is 50% of the equation. And I think it's so easy to get caught up in just the visuals that you forget that like your ears are half the equation. And all seen two videos play a scene from Pirates of the Caribbean into three different songs and have three completely different emotions. It's everything. So along the way, coming up with themes and coming up with needle drops or songs to help bring about emotion in the moment was super important to me. And I was grateful to work with Ben Zecker, who was a great composer. He came up with great themes for the characters that continually come about throughout the film and evolve and take on meaning. And then James Burnett did a great job on the soundtrack side, helping us really find some great songs from great undiscovered artists, because we didn't have money to pay, the huge bands. It was pretty much, Lovely the band. We had that one song, and that was our whole budget. So yeah, and James was great because James Burnett had a great relationship with Lovely the band. The guitarist from Lovely the band happened to be the son of the creator of Wizards of Waverly Place. So we had that connection too, because I did that show for many years. So it was kind of serendipitous how it all came together with Lovely the band. And that song was a big inspiration to me because it kind of tied everything together in the end. So we needed that song because the third act was kind of built around it. So thankfully we got it.
Yeah, that was a big, I think we knew before going to that movie that Lovely was going to be our, our flagpole song and band in the movie. So my dad even knows how to play on Maybe I'm Afraid on the guitar. Like that song is like still one of our top favorite songs. So from an actor's perspective, I don't think music is so key with me, and trying to, help you emote. So I think, I have one song that helps me cry every project I do. If I need to cry, there's like one song I listen to. I'm like, ah.
It helps the crew get in the emotion of the scene too. If I play a song before we start rehearsing and I'm like, this is the vibe of the scene, like this is the rhythm. And it really helped everyone go, oh, okay, there's a fun, upbeat, kind of quick scene. It just kind of really helps unify everyone.
And lastly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the way in which your shorthand with each other really lent itself to a lot of the creative process. Because, for you, David, you have someone on set that you're directing that's been there throughout the development process. And I know that you've said how that shorthand actually even came down to saving you time in the day because you didn't need to stop and talk about something for 10 minutes. You both already had those intrinsic beats with each other. And then for you, Lorenzo, that one of the benefits was, that already innate confidence of, oh, I have this question or I have this idea and I don't need to kind of build myself up to go have a conversation about it, or should I say something, which is very easy to have that communication. And so what did a lot of that day-to-day shorthand and even just a lot of the nonverbal communication look like? And then how did that play into the way that you were collaborating once the other cast were on set with both of you in terms of the way that you were all working on the scenes collectively?
I could answer that. I mean, I would say a lot of the advantages we had by being siblings and partners in this movie was, like David, we would wrap really late one night and then he's like, hey, get here first thing in the morning in the hotel room. Let me practice some shots. Like he would get on his iPhone and practice some shots with me. So I think I don't think on a normal movie, a director would direct the actor trying to do it.
Say, meet me in my hotel room first thing tomorrow morning so we can practice shots.
Especially with like a non-12-hour turnaround. I'm like getting up at 4 a.m. So I think we had like little advantages of like that, him practicing his shots that he wanted to get the next day. But just like, because we are brothers and we know each other our whole lives, he's able to turn the dial that, he says the words that need to be said to like hit to make sure we make our day versus if I were to work with a director that wasn't family, it would be more of like maybe more of a gentle.
Take some time to squeeze it out. I could just come in and give him the note.
You're doing good, but David's like, hey, he would just give me the.
Come on, we got to do this thing right here. You know what I'm talking about, and he would get in there and nail it. But with an independent film, the enemy is always time, and so when you have an actor who like you can just give a look to and he knows what you want, saves you a lot of time. I mean minutes, and after several scenes and many, many shots, all those minutes add up. And next thing you know, you saved a half an hour, which gave you time to get that one shot you really wanted. And then that makes all the difference. So being able to work with Lorenzo was a huge blessing because it did save us a lot of time and allow us to get things that I think we typically couldn't afford. And it was just funny because I'd come into a scene with 3 or 4 characters and I would take time with each one of the actors. And, I want to be very respectful of everyone's process and make sure they get the note how they want to hear it and a way that can be understood. Each person has a different process. And I get to Lorenzo and just be like, all right, just bring in, a little more here. And then I'd run off, just because he knows me, we know each other. And that was our process. It was a lot easier. And likewise, you'd be like, if you're pushing me too hard, you'd give me a look and I'd know, okay, I'm this is not the right direction. I need to choose a different avenue. And I think of course the brothers banter is fun. It's like, oh, I did what you said, so it's like, it was fun. It made a fun vibe on set. Yeah. For sure. I think the cast built on it. It just made everyone happy seeing 2 brothers, be on set. It was a great energy. It really was. I can't wait for the next one.
I love that collaboration, and I'm excited to hear that means there's more potential future projects with the 2 of you together. Thank you so much for sharing all of this. Really appreciate it.